Hey everyone, this is Curve and I bring you another deck profile. Today we're going to be taking a look at Clarissa. So we haven't actually done very much Clarissa content on this channel. I've actually had this deck built since the very first Lyrical set. It's one of the decks that I built out of that set, but of course I never really played Clarissa. I've dabbled with her every now and again, which is what I'm doing right now. Kind of just updating the deck because she did get a couple of new support cards in the latest Lyrical booster set, and they are actually earns correct cards, so it is actually a little bit of kind of much needed support. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop straight into the deck profile. Okay, so starting off with the ride line, of course we are going to be opting to play just the Clarissa ride line. So we haven't actually ever gone over this. So we are going to actually have to go through each card. So of course your Clarissa starter is just, your generic starter, and you do actually have to run it because the grade 1 Clarissa says that when it's placed on Van, specifically by riding over the grade 0, you check top 7, search for a grade 1 or less earns correct, add it to your hand, and then you shuffle the rest and put them on the bottom of the deck, which is a very funny concept, having to shuffle the cards and then putting them on bottom of the deck. It really doesn't mean anything, but it's there. She does also have a Vanguard skill where if she attacks while you do not have any rear guards, she is a 13k beat stick. So you're always going to have a 13k Vanguard, assuming you don't call anything, which sometimes, especially with how I built the deck, doesn't really happen very often. But of course, moving on into the grade 2. So when it's placed by riding on the grade 1, you still last one, check top 7, basically do the same thing. Search for a grade 2 or less, earns correct this time, add it to your hand, and then shuffle the rest and put them on the bottom of the deck. And once again, it has the exact same second skill, where if she attacks on Vanguard while you have no rear guard, she does get another 5k, which sometimes comes up if you don't have anything to call. It's nice that you do have that early game pressure. Just a free 5k is honestly very nice. Now, of course, for the grade 3, we are going to be playing the new Clarissa that we got in Festival Booster. I think it was 2023. Already like a whole year since we've seen the release of this. So she has the dress up mechanic where she is treated as the original Clarissa. She herself is not a earns correct, but with that dress ability, she does of course become an earns correct. So she has the act ability where you can discard a grade 3 Clarissa in order to search your deck or drop for 1, aim to be the strongest idol, which is the main order card of the deck. You add it to your hand, and then of course you shuffle the deck. But if you Persona Ride, you can pay that cost with Soul Blast 1 instead of discarding the grade 3 Clarissa. And then of course the main skill for Clarissa is when she hits anything, because she's going to be attacking a few things, you get to draw 2 cards, and then all your correct rear guards get an extra 5k until the end of turn. So she is kind of just a very big board wipe. She doesn't attack on her own, but of course that is what the order card is there for. Alright, so getting into the main deck, of course, starting with the grade 3s, we are playing the extra 3 copies of the Persona Ride. Now, of course, this is the base art. Your FFR art is going to be looking just a little bit different there, but of course, it is just, still just your Persona Ride. And then for the last 2 other grade 3 cards, I'm just playing 2 copies of base Clarissa, because you kind of have a choice on what you want to do in this deck. You can choose to play base Clarissa because she does have the on-play CB1 search your deck for the order card, which, this card technically doesn't have. You do have to see a Clarissa, and then you have to discard it because you're not able to Persona Ride on your first grade 3 turn. But we do have a consistent way to actually see the grade 3 Clarissa, so a lot of times you're playing around 6 copies more or less, and you see it pretty much every single time. Now, of course, we do have the order aim to be the strongest idol at 2 copies. This card is recurable now with the new Clarissa, so you don't really have to run more than 2. It's just basically to ensure if you don't want to play 1, because if it goes into damage, then you kind of just lose the game. But basically, you play so you have 5 more units with earns correct in their different card names. So you do have to have 5 different earns correct cards. Previously, that was very difficult because the ones in this artwork were the only earns corrects, but now we have quite a few ones that we can play, so things are a little bit easier. But basically, this order, until end of turn, all your earns correct units get an extra 5k. Then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you choose your Clarissa Vanguard, and then it gets the Vanguard skill that when it would attack, you choose 3 of your opponent's van or rearguard circles, and then it battles all of the units on those chosen circles. So it is basically just attacking 3 units at the same time. Now, most of the time you are going to be able to get a hit, assuming that they have at least 1 rearguard, which means you'll be able to proc that draw 2 skill there. And do remember that it gives 5k to all units, so your Vanguard is also going to be getting a nice little 5k bonus there. Sometimes if you're going first, you can still play this, especially if you have a Persona Ride, and you can just add another one. You do lose out on that multi-attack skill, but you get a massive power buff. Since you're going to be needing 5 rearguards with Earns Correct, you're basically just going to be getting extra 5k to your Vanguard and 10k to both your columns, so you can make some pretty nasty numbers even going first. Alright, so moving on into the grade 2s, we of course start off with probably the best and worst Earns Correct that we actually have access to. This is of course Evelyn, all the way from the first set. She is an 8k base, which is one of the things that really holds her back. Of course, if you do give everything a 5k, she does just become 13, so she's not entirely terrible. But when she is placed on rearguard from hand, if your Vanguard is the grade 3 Clarissa, which is the part I really don't like about this, is that this is a turn 3 card. You CB1, search your deck for 1 grade 2 or less Earns Correct, and reveal it. And then if you don't have a rearguard with the same name as the card, you can call it to an open rearguard circle. So basically, she is just your tutor, your main usage of Counterblast in this deck. Another reason why I opted to play New Clarissa, because you do have a lot of very important skills that require Counterblast. Of course, Evelyn being probably the most prominent one, just because you kind of do need that in order to gain like a semblance of advantage. This deck can make a decent amount of advantage, but it is not really the greatest that, especially since everything has to be unique. You have to have basically one of every single Earns Correct, or you need to like most of them. And then of course, following that up, we do have the other card from that festival last year, being the, what's her name? Nexella. Okay, but she has a skill that is active in both rear or hand, where if you have a Vanguard with Clarissa in his card name, you can CB1 and put her into the soul, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets the auto skill that when it attacks, if you played the order this turn, you can choose one of your Rearguards and stand it. So this is your form of multi-attack. Sometimes, unfortunately, you do have to call this to be the 5th name. It gets another 5k, but then you're going to be using its skill to put it into the soul. But because it is both active on rear and hand, you can definitely commit this in the early game and not really feel that bad about it. If you have a full board and you don't want to overcall something, just having that skill from hand, being able to use this from hand also is pretty cool. This is our main form of multi-attack. We're getting about 4 attacks per turn. It is possible to get 5, but it is very inconsistent and not very good in my opinion, which is why this is our main attack extender. It does also give us soul, which we kind of do need for a couple of effects. Alright, so moving on, we do actually have a new card from the newest Lyrical Booster set. This is a Earns Correct follower. Her name is Puresso. Okay, we're just playing her for the name mostly, because when you play Aim to be the strongest idol, if your opponent has no rearguards, you choose one of your Vanguards, and until the end of turn, your opponent cannot call or play Sentinels for the battle that unit attacked. So this card is pretty cool in concept. It makes it so that if your opponent tries to avoid your how would you even say that? Swing at multiple rears by calling nothing, then they actually get hard punished with the fact that they can't Sentinel your Vanguard, they can't PG it. But most of the time, what's going to end up happening is your opponent's going to leave their board with 1 rearguard, and this isn't going to be live because for whatever reason, they decided to make it so your opponent has to have an empty board. But this honestly is almost never going to proc, which is why we're only playing 2 copies of it. It's just there to be another Earns Correct body. It is also, you know, something you can commit during the early game, which is something that you do kind of need in this deck. And then for our last grade 2 Earns Correct is going to be one of the classic ones, Catalin. She does have the skill where your Earns Correct Clarissa attack hits, you can CB1 and pitch a card in order to restand her. Like I said, this is potentially your 5th attack, but I'm just kind of playing her as another copy of a grade 2 because, you know, you do search the top 7 and she's just 1 different name. She's also very much not very impactful, so honestly just in here for the name. And then for our last grade 2 card, we are playing 1 copy of Twin Cast, because Twin Cast is just an overall solid card. Try and fit it in wherever you can. And honestly, this deck doesn't really have the ability to play any other orders, any other kind of regalious piece, because you do have an order you need to play every single turn. Alright, so moving on into the grade 1s, we are going to be starting off with actually the only non-Ernst Correct card in the entire deck, which is Rugena. Now this card completely went under my radar. It is an LBT-2 card. I completely skipped over this, even though it is a triple rare, but this card is actually kind of insane. It's just terrible that it's locked in. It's just bad that it's locked into a terrible archetype. So at the end of the battle, it boosts a unit with Ernst Correct in its name. Specifically, an Ernst Correct, which makes it kind of unfortunate that your Clarissa doesn't become an Ernst Correct until grade 3, but because you do have to commit an entire column for this. But if you have a Clarissa Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1 and retire her to search your deck for up to 1 grade 3 or less Ernst Correct in its card name and add it to your hand. So I have no idea what they were cooking on LB2 in BT2, but this card actually reads completely insane. So whenever it boosts an archetypical card, you Soul Blast and retire it to search literally any card in your deck. So this is probably your best turn 1, turn 2 play, because you do this, you pop it, you search out the grade 3 Clarissa that you need to discard, which for whatever reason, this card has 0 restrictions on it, other than the fact that it has to boost and Ernst Correct. So it's actually insanely consistent. So most of the time, you're not going to be pitching like Persona Ride. You can just search out the base Clarissa just to be the pitch fodder. And then theoretically, if you do need any other, Ernst Correct, you can just search out whatever you need. You can search out Evelyn, because she's just going to be able to get you another one during the next turn. Alright, so moving on, we are going to, of course, be hopping into the Ernst Correct, another new Ernst Correct, this time an Ernst Correct follower, that going to be Redetta. So she has a con skill where if you play the order, aim to be strongest idol, your opponent cannot intercept, which is somewhat relevant because it means that you can actually swing with your other rear guard, and then they can't just be like, okay, 18 intercept. It means that, and get it out of the way so that Clarissa can't hit it. It kind of just locks down their rear guard so they can't do anything, and they're going to get hit no matter what. But more importantly, she has this back row auto skill, which is when your Vanguard's attack hits, you can stand this unit. So this obviously combos very well with the grade 2. You can boost an attack, swing, and then your Vanguard swings. The grade 2 is going to be restanding the rear guard in front of her, and then assuming your opponent has more than just their Vanguard and the attack hits, you're just going to be restanding her and you get another column, which is also really great because she's going to be boosting for 13 if you play the order. And then, of course, when your Clarissa attack hits, she's going to get another 5k and become an 18k booster. So your numbers do actually get a little bit out of control, assuming you hit everything and your opponent calls a board and you have things to attack and everything goes right. But most of the time, it is honestly not just enough to win the game. Alright, so just finishing off, we are playing 2 copies of this gal, Tribly. She's a 5k grade 1, but whenever her Vanguard's attack hits, it gets 5k until the end of turn, so that she can get a total of plus 15 if every single one of her attacks hits onto a unit. So she's basically just here to be another grade 1 Ernst Correct that you can search off of the grade 1 in the ride skill. And for that reason, I'm also playing just 1 copy of Lena. She has a skill where when your rear guard is retired, when your Ernst Correct is retired, you can Soul Blast 1 and pitch a card in order to put that retired card back into your hand, which is fine, I guess. Honestly, like the same reason we're playing the restander, just having another name just in case. Just continuing on with the the basic stuff. Of course, playing 4 PGs. I'm just not playing Elementary because I didn't want to take it out of a deck, but obviously if you actually wanted to competitively play this deck, which I don't think you should do, obviously just put in any Elementaria. Moving to the trigger lineup, pretty basic. We're going to be playing the 4-8 crit. Playing Soul and crits, it doesn't really matter. Like, you have enough Soul in this deck. It doesn't Soul Blast that much, but, it could theoretically come up. So, why not? Opting to play some draws. because your numbers already get pretty fat, and this is very much a combo deck, so you do need to see some of your pieces, and draws just help you get there. But, you know, the extra front trigger shield definitely would be appreciated. And then, of course, just moving on, just vanilla crits. You could, as I always say, just play whatever you want. And then for my OT, I do have currently Lyrical OT, but Lyrical OT isn't really necessary because your numbers already, like I said, get pretty fat. The extra 10k isn't going to be making a huge difference. So you could always play something like Purple OT, you could play Blue OT. You could probably even play Red OT because you always swing with your Vanguard first, if you really want to. Pretty much any OT is going to be working fairly effectively in this deck. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just finish off with a very quick test hand here. Now, of course, what we're trying to look for is, obviously, we want to see a grade 3 Clarissa, so we're going to keep that. Aim to be idle is going to be searched out, so we don't need that. And then probably what I always do is I try and put all the grade 1s back because you have a greater chance of actually seeing them. You can potentially see the grade 1s on your top 7 on the first grade 1, and you can also see them off the grade 2. So we're going to go ahead and mull back 4. Pretty decent. PG might come in handy, but honestly, we don't really need it this early game. We also saw the Evelyn, which is another card that we kind of do need to see. We saw our one of the grade 2, which, you know, helps us make a name, but honestly, we probably would prefer the multi-attacker in this instance, but we play it at 4 copies, so we're probably going to see it. So, of course, we're going to go ahead and stand up and draw. Going to be pitching probably this card because I have 4 copies of it. I wouldn't pitch this just because I only have 1 copy. Gonna be riding into the grade 1 Melissa, checking the top 7 cards of the deck, searching for a grade 1 earns correct, and we did manage to see one there. Do remember that you need to shuffle the remaining cards. Ask your opponent if they would like to cut it, and then put them on the bottom of the deck. Just going to be going +1 off that. Our opponent's going to attack. We could theoretically block because we don't really need any CV, but let's go ahead and take it. We're going to go and draw. We draw into a twin cast. Honestly, that's probably our best discard here. If we had gotten that, we might have had a really good turn to play because we could have called down one of our grade 2s and then boosted it. But we're going to check top 7 once again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. We have a couple of targets. I think we're going to go ahead and opt to grab the Restander. Now, we don't actually have anything we need to commit. If we had a copy of this, I would probably commit a line so that we can search out whatever we need. But honestly, in this situation, we already have the Clarissa. We already have the Evelyn, so we'd probably, if we see one of these, we're probably just going to be using it to search out for Sunride, which we don't necessarily need until turn 4. So we're not going to commit anything because we can just swing in for 15, drive check, get a crit there, push a little bit of damage. That 15 is always going to be a pretty strong thing. We're going to go ahead and block 1, take 1, and get a, probably not heal there because we did actually crit them last turn. We're going to stand and draw. So now we did get another copy of this, but this card probably not going to be very useful. I already have 2 grade 2s, so I'm just going to go ahead and pitch it and ride into the grade 3 Clarissa. Now we're going to go ahead and activate a couple of effects here. We're going to use the grade 3 Clarissa, discarding the other Clarissa, and we're also going to use the Evelyn here to search out a different earns correct. So I already have a bunch of grade 2s, so I'm probably just going to commit a Tilby here. Maybe I could even go for my one of here, which I could also do depending on where I want to put it. If I'm going to be calling the Tilby, I'm probably putting it behind Evelyn. If I'm calling this, I'd probably call it there, just to have some more Vanguard on hit pressure. But our Vanguard is already swinging at 13 or 18, I should say, after we play our order. So there is a decently high chance that either they're going to commit a lot of cards to guard it, or we're going to actually be able to hit. Now, of course, our opponent is still at grade 2 during our play of this, so things are a little bit sketchy here, but what we can do is we can go ahead and call, and then we can even use our last counterblast, slide this into the soul to give our Vanguard the skill, and then we play this, give 5k to everything. So we can go ahead and swing for 28 on this column, swing an 18k Vanguard at the Vanguard, drive checking 1, drive checking 2, getting a heal trigger. Maybe that one does actually proc. On attack, this is supposed to restand, and then if Clarissa hits, we're going to go ahead and draw 2 more cards. Everything gets another 5k, and because the attack hit, this grade 0 is going to be restanding. We can go ahead and swing in for another number here, assuming our opponent we only hit once. This is 10k, plus another 5k from its skill, 15, and then another 5k to the entire board is 20. 20 plus the 18 makes 38. And then, of course, this was 28 before. Both of them got an extra 5k, so that's another 38. So you are making some pretty decently big numbers here. But of course, opponents could go ahead and attack. Maybe we guard one attack and then take another one. Gonna go ahead and stand and draw. So unfortunately, we didn't actually get Persona Ride here, but we did get the other Clarissa, so we can actually just still do our full plays. And go ahead and pitch that, search out the second copy, assuming that it's still in deck. If we had whiffed on it and, actually threw it into the damage zone, what we could have done is, just grabbed it from drop. Since we didn't Persona Ride this turn, we kind of don't really have very much else to do. But we can still at least do a little bit. We don't have a multi-attack, so we're down to 3 attacks here. We can commit the booster, go ahead and swing in, do the drive checks. We are going to be able to swing at multiple things. We did actually get a Persona Ride off there, which was what I was going to search off of this skill here. But in this case, maybe I just search another Evelyn in case, something happens. Or I could even probably just search the multi-attacker for next turn, assuming that we even live that long. Because unfortunately, Clarissa is not very good going into a lot of, the decks of the meta. But, we still have these same swings. We played this, so this is at 15k base. If the Clarissa attack hit, we would be drawing 2 more cards. I kind of did that out of order, but whatever. And then swing for 38 and yet another 38. Alright, so that's going to be it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to do those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.